This is the Elite Sport Mentality Podcast with me, Tom Evans. Welcome to the Elite Sport Mentality Podcast, where we'll be exploring all things sports psychology. Whether you're an athlete, coach, or sports enthusiast, this podcast is your go-to resource for understanding the mental side to sports performance. Each episode, I'll be talking to someone from the world of sport or sports psychology to get their insights into the mental side of their sport. We'll delve into the latest research, share inspiring stories from top athletes, and provide practical tips to you to enhance your mental skills. Join me as I look to unlock the secrets to an elite sport mentality. Let's go. Okay, so welcome to the Elite Sport Mentality Podcast. For the first episode, I'm happy to introduce Martyn Rooney, who is a former 400-metre runner and 4x400-metre runner. Now, I was going to reel off some of his honours, but it might just be easier for me to say he's a multiple medal winner at European level and World Championships level, and also with the Olympic bronze medal in the 4x400 metres. So we're going to go into that in a bit more detail, Martyn, and then we'll talk about what you're doing now. More so now, and how I know you. So I know you through how you support and help run the DICE program for British athletics, but obviously you do other bits alongside that. So welcome.
Hi Tom, how's it going?
Yeah, good mate, thank you. So just to start off with, like, very kind of generically, like, can you just talk me through your journey in sports? I've gone through some of your honours, but what's the kind of the pathway leading up to that?
I suppose my pathway, I grew up in Croydon, and I have a big family, supportive parents. So I grew up in an area where I suppose you were challenged a lot. Where we grew up, it's can be quite rough, but it's also you learn how to handle yourself and be, I suppose, streetwise rather than don't know what the right word is, but I feel like I kind of grew up in an area where you were challenged, and if you didn't learn how to adapt to the surroundings, you were always going to struggle. So that was a great grounding for me. I went to some really good schools. Went to a Catholic boys' school called the John Fisher School in Purley, which was, for me, like, it was about the focus was more about developing into a human, into a man, I suppose, and how best to do that rather than the education side. Almost felt like it was secondary there. Although we got good education as well, but it was about how you are as a person. So that really grounded me, and I suppose kind of set me up for a career in athletics. I joined Croydon Harriers as an 11-year-old or 10-year-old, maybe, quite young, which is the local athletics club. And from there, kind of just carried on through the age groups. I was fortunate enough to I did lots of cross country, lots of long distance stuff. I did lots of field events. I did anything that was thrown at me. I played rugby, I swam, I played football. I did every sport that I could have. Until I probably about 16, 17 years old, where I decided athletics was the focus. Mainly because I was too skinny to play rugby. And I think they really wanted to put me into the second row because I was fast and I could push. But fortunately, I got quite good at athletics. And from there, I had a junior career as an athlete. I went through the age group championships. I picked up I think I'm still a British junior record holder for the 400. I was fortunate enough to go to like 2 senior championships as a junior, which I think for me was how, with the school education I had, and going into a senior championships as a junior was definitely like, you either make it or you fail. And I think that was kind of definitely put me in a good place for my future career. It taught me how to be on a team. It taught me how to be around other athletes, how to be focused on your own goals. Because athletics and any sport, there's lots of distractions. But I learned very early that you have to kind of focus on yourself. And so from then on, I just went to the Commonwealths, Europeans, Olympics, World Champs, and I had a very long career. I think by the end of it, people were bored of seeing me on the team. But it was fruitful, and I was thankful for it.
Yeah, amazing. So a couple of things I want to kind of pick out there, which kind of cropped up. But first one with regards to that multi-sport approach. So although this is our first episode that I'm releasing, I have recorded a couple of others, and that element of having that multi-sport background where you don't sort of pin down you see earlier and earlier now, I know from working in academy football and stuff like that, the sports are so keen for them just to do that sport from quite an early age. But it's quite a big sort of debate really of whether that's good or not. But do you think that helped from a technical point of view, physical point of view, but maybe even a psychological point of view, having that sort of multiple sport upbringing?
I think playing multiple sports obviously kept me busy. I think it kept my parents happy as well. So it kept them, I was probably a restless child, so the multiple sports helped. But I think from a mental approach, it was just there was always something else to focus on. I couldn't get too bogged down by a result or too high about a result. It was always like, okay, we've got training for the next thing. And I think when you play team sports, you get humbled very quickly. And I think that was important for me. Like I was a good rugby player. I wasn't a great rugby player. I was a good footballer. I wasn't a great footballer, but it kind of, those were fun sports I enjoyed playing. So I was kind of brought down to earth very quickly. And some of the tackles I took in rugby, really, there's no hiding. When you get picked up and you hit the ground like that, it's kind of, you get humbled really quickly. And they definitely helped me with my athletics and my approach to sport, spinning around other people.
Yeah, and imagine that sort of durability that you get from it as well, from going into athletics after playing rugby is pretty good. So then you've touched on your parents a few times already. So can you talk me about what made them? So we do parent sessions with so we have the athletics program and other programs, and we started doing some parent sessions alongside those because it's obviously so important to sort of try and guide and educate the parents on how best to support an elite athlete, because it is a different sort of kettle of fish in supporting a sort of quote unquote normal child. So can you kind of go through some of how did they support you so well? Like what did they do so well to kind of guide you through that process?
I suppose both my parents, neither of them are sporty, never came from sport. My dad was brought up on a farm as a kid in Ireland, and my mum was in a family, they're both in families of 6 kids, so big families. And I think they kind of basically instilled a kind of a work ethic that we were here that nothing came for free. Mm-hmm. We weren't, I think I was very privileged with the life I had, like my parents, married, we had electricity, heat, all those kind of things. We were well fed. But I don't think we were spoiled in the sense that we didn't have like a PlayStation when we were young. We weren't allowed to get that. I think my first PlayStation I got was when I moved to Loughborough at 18. And it was kind of like way behind the curve. But for that, it was just part of like, we were praised as well for what we did, but also like we had strong discipline in our family. I've got an older sister and 2 younger brothers. I've got a younger brother with severe physical and learning difficulties. So you're in an environment where you are just part of the team. You're not you're very quickly reminded that you have to do your bit. And I think that's what my parents did really well. I think from an athletics point of view, they encouraged sport. They wanted us to do as much sport as possible. They ferried us around as everyone does. My first couple of meetings when I came onto the world-class plan, I was still at school. So I was 18, I just turned. And my mum came to some of the meetings with nutritionists and psych and all those kind of people. And it was kind of an interesting thing for her. She didn't know what to do, she didn't know what to say, didn't know how to handle it. And I think I was very fortunate. The people that we worked with, they spoke to my parents more than they spoke to me. But I think they were just there to support. When they have tried to be involved in like, why don't you run fast and all that stuff, I think they learned quite quickly that it's just not the right thing to say. Yeah. Not saying that they still didn't do it when my dad did it all the time. I feel like in my 30s and my dad's still trying to like, why don't you just run a bit more? All right, Dad. I think that was
simple sport.
Yeah. Just work a bit harder. I think that's the answer to everything, which is fine. It definitely helped for my youth. But I think, understanding like when to step back. And I've seen some really good examples of that. And my parents have done it quite well as well. Like, in the sense of they've learned from their mistakes. So, it's something I'm learning as I've got 2 young kids. It's starting to learn to understand, like, you just kind of just encourage. You're there to support. It may be check and challenge, but you're also there to support. And I think that's what my parents ended up being really good at.
Yeah, lovely, brilliant. And then with the sports psychology specifically, then, so can you talk me through your sort of experience with that in the past? Like, so with regards to when you were competing, was it something that you always did you ever take it seriously? Did you always take it seriously? Is it something you learned a bit later on? Like, what's your sort of exposure and experience with sports psychology personally in your sport?
I think it was something I undervalued as an athlete. It's something that I learned to later on in my career. That I was like, oh, probably should have touched base with that a bit more often. Like, and it wasn't always about like or thinking about like how to like getting a good. It was about like how do you manage your energy, how do you manage your time, how do you concentrate on certain things. And I think those are skills that I didn't realize until later on would have been massive assets to me. They were things that I probably picked up from being around other athletes and seeing how they operated. I'm quite an observant person. I probably learn as much from the training group as the coach. You know, if you're in the right coach training group, I can learn as much as you give me a world-class coach. I'll probably learn as much from the trainers, partners. And I think that's skills that I learned from some of the people I worked with. But also, like, I think I was very conscious that I was there to enjoy myself. I was doing something I was privileged to do. I think that was quite constantly being in my head was that I'm privileged to be an athlete, fortunate to have this body that allows me to train and work really hard and the physical attributes to be fast. And I think it was like mentally, I felt like, okay, if I just use this to the best of my ability and keep pushing myself, I'll get through things. And so, that was how I used psych. I think there's probably people in my career who were sports psychs, but they nurtured or managed that side of my sport. And when times were tough, but I had people there I could turn to and go like, oh, my room's messy. And I knew that when I say my room's messy, I'm all over the place, and they could just kind of like bullet point things and straighten them out for me. And that was always how I handled things.
Yeah. So a couple of things. So what you touched on the end there is that the best sports psyche is delivered through other people, so coaches and training partners and physios and stuff like that. I think we see that more and more now, where if you can get those messages being kind of delivered consistently by those support networks, and that's the best way forward. And another thing you touched on there is a lot of the athletes I work with, 16 to 18-year-olds, I think sometimes they're surprised with the messages I say around just being practical in their approach. So sports psych, like you say, is not always the sort of breathe, like meditation, yoga and all that. People might think of that when you say, okay, do some breathing technique. They think, oh, it's really sort of, like I say, voodoo-y sort of stuff. But actually the practical approach is, can I just like sort myself out so that I'm not stressing going into a competition? We talk about pre-competition routines. Can I just get my nutrition right? Can I sort my kit out? Can I get to the venue in plenty of time so I can go through my warm-ups and stuff? Like, that's so beneficial from a sports psych point of view, because it helps you kind of relax and concentrate and stuff like that. So I think a lot of the time I try and get athletes to work that area out first, and then if there's still existing sort of issues, quote unquote issues, then we can sort of engage in like techniques and stuff. But that's a really good message, I think. And then when you say about other people that you may have worked with in past, training partners, or like people you raced against and stuff, did you ever see any sort of really good things that you thought were good sports psych in action sort of thing from other people? Or
I think an athlete I trained with, they managed their time through like a spreadsheet. So they had a spreadsheet of like, this is a structure to their time. And then because they had that structure, they were able to just focus on doing that. They didn't have to worry about who they're racing against or what the level of competition was. It just gave them the grounding, and stuff about the warm-up was a structured warm-up that they did every time. So all those, for me, that's something I really thrived in. It was like having like, okay, here's my A, B, C. If I do these things, then the performance, like, it's all down to me, and it's all down to like getting it right on that time. But if you've done everything in the build up to that, then I'm okay. Like, at least I've given myself the best chance to do it. And I think that's something I learned from a couple of athletes, and actually from working on the Youth Talent Program. Some of the students some of the athletes who excelled were the ones who kind of had their lives planned out every week. It's not like rigid, but they had a bullet points of these are things like to-do lists, and then here's my days. And that's, I know that's performance lifestyle, but the psych was the same part. Like, that's crossover from both. And then just like, from the sports psych point of view, I was also, I think from being at the school I was at, being checked and challenged, not being scared to tell me, do one, or lock your ideas up, or and doing it in the right way. Like, I liked working with people who are not scared and telling me after you sort it out. You know what I mean? Like, and those are the people I work really well with. And I think I didn't shy away from that. And I think that was an important thing. And that's something I'm learning now. It's like, not everyone can respond to that, and you develop. And everyone's different in that sense.
It's finding the right environment for you, isn't it? And what you're talking about there is, again, with that scheduling, it's the message, the sports psych element of that is it's bringing focus onto you and your performance and your preparation. And I have conversation with athletes all the time across all sports, but within athletics with the power of 10 and how sort of dangerous it can be just to keep on comparing yourself to what other people are throwing or running or swimming or jumping or whatever your sport is looking at other people. And naturally, by kind of having that schedule, if you have quite a good pre-competition routine where it's all scheduled out on the things that you need to do and the things that you're in your preparation that you need to tick off, then it's really difficult to then compare yourself to others because you're so busy focusing on yourself. And they're always the kind of consistent message that I try and get across to athletes is trying to encourage that focus on yourself. And how have you found that in the past with your own career like that? Because it is a massive issue across all sports, especially youth sports. We work predominantly 16 to 18 year olds on the DICE program. That comparing yourself to others is absolute confidence killer. But how did you get on with that, and how did you kind of stop yourself from doing it, or did you never really find that an issue?
No, I definitely did. And I think Power 10, you highlighted there, was something that when it came in, it really was a changer. Like, it used to have that thing that's like, oh, what's your PB before a race, especially at the low level races. And you can kind of, people would fake their PB or whatever. And then it was like Power 10 came in. It was like, I know every stat that you've done all year. Like, I know what you've done last year. I know where you raced, who you raced with, and training partners and all that kind of stuff. And there was a lot of information. I think for me, it was understanding that I was worried about my times going on Power 10. That was something I was concerned about. And then I went with the coach who's like, I don't care. And he was basically like, I need you to do this in this race. And you got to go, don't worry what happens to the result. This is about you developing so we can get you ready for the championships. And so like, I'd have some times on my Power 10. I was like, it was a horrible time. Yeah. But then I knew that the structure, I was working on my race pattern. I was working on something within that race that I needed to do there. If I hadn't done it, then I wouldn't have been able to get to the next stage. So I started to understand that Power 10 was just kind of like, it's a record, but it doesn't mean you're going to go win the championships. It doesn't tell that story. It's that understanding that your training and everything that goes around it is the most important part. The Power 10 is kind of just an external thing. We used to have it in one of the athletics magazines where the results were at the end of they had all the results. And you just go looking for your name and see who did what, but it was never the same as Power 10. So I think that was the way I handled it, and I do it with athletes now, like as an engagement lead on World Class Plan and on YTP. It's just understanding like what's your coach set you out to do. If you execute that, that's the most important part of that result. When it comes to your championships, that's where you go out to deliver. And run as fast as you can, or throw, or jump, whatever it might be, to the best of your ability. So, it's just a process.
Yeah, amazing. And then let's kind of move on to, I suppose, that for people maybe know you best is that the Olympic Games in the bronze medal that you won at the Olympic Games. Can you just talk me through that process? I'm not sure if many people have listened to many Olympians talk, but I've definitely not really had a conversation in depth with one. Can you just talk me through what that experience was like going to Olympic Games and then therefore ending up with a medal as well? How was that experience?
It was my first games. I was 21 years old, and I'd actually gone into the Olympics unbeaten, which was mad in itself. I'd raced a hell of a lot that year, and we were working on the process, like learning the sport, learning the event. It sounds funny. I'd done it for the sport for a while, but every year, if you get fitter and faster, you have to relearn how to run. You have to relearn how to execute the run. And I was still working it out. So I went unbeaten throughout the season. I got to the Olympics. My first loss was in the semi-final. I came second in my semi-final to the Olympic champion in the end. So it's fine. But, and then in the final, I came sixth, right? Because I tried to do something rather than just doing what I'd done all summer. I tried to do something different. So I lost that. But the relay offered an opportunity to kind of, for retribution, gave me an opportunity to kind of go, look, I've messed up here individually, but it's an opportunity for me and my team to go out and pick up a medal. We won our heat, which was good, against some really, really good countries. we were very confident. And I think as a team, we knew we needed to do the same thing again. First 2 legs, the third leg, and the fourth leg. I was on the fourth leg. I was like, if we can just do the same for the first 2 legs, I think we'll be okay. Unfortunately, that doesn't always happen at Olympic Games. Other countries raised their game, and we found ourselves in a bad position. By the time I got the baton, we actually finished 4th in the race, beaten by a Russian team that was later found to have failed a drug test. So it was a very disappointing time. We knew we'd run really well. We'd run a time that would have won medals at every games beforehand. And we were beaten by a Russian team that we'd actually beaten early in the season by about 6 seconds. So it was a shock. But come away after that, like I knew I'd given everything I could. I put everything on the line that day, and I came away with a brilliant split, but we didn't come away with a medal on the day, so it was very tough. But when we got our medal later on, about 8 years later, it was a good moment.
Yeah, but and then what was that? So you spoke a moment about doing something in that 400 where you did something different. You changed your game plan. I have a video that I show a lot of on a lot of my presentations. It's Chris Hoyt talking to Michael Johnson and about sports psychology, and I think it would put me out of a job, to be honest, because Chris Hoyt talks so well about sports psychology and the messages he delivers, and he backs it with experiences and stuff. Yeah, I'll put it in the when I do the description, I'll put the link in the bio there so people can watch it, because it is really insightful. But he talks about the same thing, and he learned from that mistake of going into a competition. Someone set a fast time, and he changed his strategy, went out, and when it went too fast too soon and burnt out, sort of thing. So, talk me through that. Like, what made you do that, and what were your learnings from that moving forward? Do you think?
Well, I think my learning, what made me do it was my first major final. I'd been to a couple of juniors before, where I had made the same mistakes, really. I think European juniors, I didn't run badly. I came second. World juniors, I tried to go out and run super fast, and then I came third instead of winning it. I could have comfortably won it if I'd have just got round. And then at the Olympics, I think I thought, this is Olympic final. You have to give something else. You have to find something else within you. And I think, in hindsight, learning from what I've seen and what you do, is if you stick to your plan that you set out in the semi-final, the race will bring it to you anyway. Like the performance will come. We've seen it in every the men's 400 this year at the Olympic Games when Matt Smith came second. That he ran the perfect race. He executed everything round. It was just he's beaten by a guy who had a different, he saw his goal and it was beating Matt, and that's all he thought about. So going down that home straight, Matt's thinking about a white line, whereas this guy's chasing him. And it was, that's all I had to do in that final. I think if I'd stuck to my plan, I'd probably got a bronze medal there, and it would have been an amazing, I wouldn't have to run that quick to have got that bronze medal either. I'd run quicker in the semi-final. So if I'd have just ran similar to that, I'd have been fine. And I think that's where you learn and experience comes in. And athletics is cruel like that, but I learned a hell of a lot, and it definitely helped me. It took me a long time to win a championships after that, but I learned those lessons. It's just understanding that what you've worked on all year is what's going to get you across the line. It's not trying to do something new, because you're in the environment you're in. It's sticking to the plan that you set out with your coach. And look, if that doesn't work, at least you've stuck to a plan that you know that has got traction and such. Like, it's something that has often given results in the past. And I feel that's where the mistake I made. I was like, I need to find something else. I didn't need to.
No, and this is interesting. I talked to athletes about setting goals, and goals. We have like a goal setting pyramid, an outcome goal, which is like, okay, I want to win an Olympic medal or whatever. They might see that as being relatively in their control, because they think I'm really talented and I'm going to work really hard to achieve that. But in reality, like, everyone else is there to try and win as well. So it's not necessarily in your control. What is in your control is setting those sort of process goals of what do I need to do today, what do I need tomorrow, what do I need to do the next day in order to get there, because that is fully within your control.
Talking of goals, my goal that year was to make the Olympic final. So in November beforehand, I wrote 44.60. Make Olympic final. Didn't say anything about medaling. So then I did exactly that. I ran 44.60. I made the final. Like, my goal was achieved, and that's where you should always have that next level of goal setting. Is okay, cool. Okay, you achieve that. What do you do after that? And that's what I think, because I hadn't set that goal beforehand. was trying to make it up like within 24 hours, and I'd invested everything from, I think it's October-ish, that time all the way through to the winter. I'd set that goal as my target. And once I'd achieved it, I was like, it was that was it. So understanding goal setting and what, that was another thing that I came out learning. I had a huge amount of learning from that. And always aimed a little bit higher.
Yeah, well, it's funny actually. I worked with a long distance runner, a private client before, and we spoke about how goals can sometimes be limiting. So he used to have a goal. I was trying to get him to stop setting time related goals, because when he set a time related goal, he would hit that time exactly. And him and his coach, like his coach's messages were the same as mine. It's like, if we just stop thinking about the time, who knows what you would have ran? You might have ran like 2-3 seconds quicker. So it's interesting that we see goals as really important. Setting goals really important, but then I suppose it's setting those challenging specific goals and pick them when they're appropriate. So let's move on to what you're doing now. Obviously, we spoke about your role with the DICE program, supporting young athletes through that program, but maybe more so, let's talk more about the other work that you've been doing, and more recently with the recent Olympic Games and stuff like that. Can you just talk us through your role with that?
I suppose I retired from athletics in 2021. I'd already been working on the YTP with Loughborough College for a couple of years by then. And 2022 March, the Olympics went and I didn't go. And unfortunately, it wasn't a really good games for British athletics and for the 4x4s in general. Like, there was no medals there. Our men's 4x4 didn't make the final, which was the first time I think we'd not made a global final. Well, every time throughout my career, we made global finals. So it was a big change. And in the March the next year, I kind of got a call saying, like, would you like to take over the 4x4 program? With the assistance of Nick Dakin, who was my long-term coach and who helped me with the 4x4 as well. And I was like, yeah, 100%. It was something that I was very passionate about, something I understood. I knew the athletes, I knew what the goals were, and I felt like I had an idea of what needed to be done so that it didn't happen again. So I took it. I went to 2022. We set a goal for the men. We hadn't qualified for the World Champs that year, so we focused on the European Championships. And for the women who had qualified for the Worlds, it was making sure that they went to the Worlds and got back into medal winning ways. So we did that. The women got a bronze medal. The men won the Europeans, and it was goals that were set by the athletes. But have conversations with them. I knew what I wanted for them, but I knew that throughout my experience as an athlete, it was kind of, if I dictate the goals, then it's somebody else's goals, not theirs. UK Sport, who provide all the support, financial support for UK for Olympic sport, basically. They always have like a medal target, and it was never something that motivated athletes. So I made a conscious effort that, like, right, we're going to have lots of meetings on Teams and Zoom and all that kind of thing. But from those meetings, we're going to have goals for the year. And that process started in 2022. 2023, we came away from the World Champs with 3 medals. We had a silver in the mixed relay and 2 bronzes in the 4x4s. And then this year at the Olympics, once again, I had my own goals for them, but the athletes set their goals, and we came away with 3 bronze medals and 3 national records. So it was an amazing games for us as a 4x4 program, and it was something that the athletes invested heavily in. The top athletes like Matt Hudson-Smith, Amber Anning, Charlie Dodson, people like that, Lavia Nielsen, they all really gave themselves to it. They understood. I understood what their roles were. Like, they had their individuals to focus on, but once that was done, they were heavily invested in the relay. And Amber and Lavia actually ran in the mixed relay as well, which is before their individuals. So we had a group of athletes who were super talented, but also invested in what we were trying to do. Understood the bigger picture, and came away. Some of them came away with 2 medals from Olympic Games, and it changes their life. We talked about the things, it's the tangibles and the non-tangibles, but there's the things you get a medal, but it's everything else that goes around it. Once you've won a medal, your profile goes through the roof. A lot of athletes who weren't recognised are now recognised. Stuff like going to meet the Prime Minister at 10 Downing Street. They're going off to Buckingham Palace in a couple of weeks, and they'll go meet the King. And those are things that only medalists get to do. So it's like, for them, they understood that whole buy-in thing to that For me, it was a big draw. But it was the athletes who were brought into it.
Yeah, amazing. And what was the experience? How did it differ to being at an Olympics as an athlete compared to being at an Olympics as a coach or guiding athletes through that experience rather than you going through it yourself? Have you kind of had time to reflect on how that was different? What was similar? What was different about that?
Oh, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I think I went to Beijing, London, and Rio, which were 3 completely different games as an athlete. Beijing was my first games, and it was like a propaganda game. So everything about it was perfect, except for our accommodation was a bit weird. But the stadium was unbelievable. The heat, the perfect temperature, everything about it was amazing. Then we went to London, and the pressure was stupidly high. It was something I was not prepared for. If I'd have met Wayne Rooney, I think that would have made a big difference. Just understand how to Rooney is the surname, is an easy chant. When 80,000 people start shouting it, there's no way to prepare for it. Unless you speak to someone like Wayne. So I wish I'd have done that. And then Rio, it was just a rubbish game. It was just cold. It was wet. It was poorly supported. And I've had a bit of a down. Like we got disqualified actually in the heats of the 4x4. And it was a bit dodgy around that. But anyway, so I've had a bit of a negative finish to my own Olympic Games experience. I didn't qualify for 2021 Tokyo. So to go to Paris, I was just excited about it. I wanted to go. I knew it was going to be an amazing games. I knew Paris was going to do an amazing job. But I also knew we had a group of athletes who had gone to the World Championships the year before, picked up 3 medals. I knew there was a group of athletes who we'd prepared properly, and we knew that if we could do our job as a support star, the athletes would deliver. And that's quite a nice feeling going into any championships, but especially in the Olympic Games.
Yeah, amazing. And then when you obviously I'm not trying to age you here, but you're guiding athletes through the YTP, you're guiding them through with your coaching. Compared to when you were coming through, do you think the pressures that are put on athletes are different, or do you think they're quite similar? Obviously, with social media and exposure and some of the bits you've been talking about, do you think you can see quite a lot of what you went through, or do you think it's different? And how do you see people kind of navigating those challenges?
Yeah, I think social media is a complete game changer. I had it throughout my career. Well, not throughout my career, towards the second half of my career, I suppose. I was like either the newspapers and the radio and TV and Michael Johnson normally mouthing off. And then it was like social media became a big thing, and it was like anyone could mouth off at you if you didn't run perfectly or whatever. And you just had to learn to switch off to it. I think there were some athletes who just understood what social media meant as a business. It wasn't for them to go and read. It was especially about themselves. It was to ignore that kind of information. And it was I can imagine it's very tough. I think as a group of athletes now that I get to work with, they're born with social media as such. Like it's part of their lives. Like I remember when Facebook came out. Yeah, that's how old I am. Like I remember when it came, and I was at university, and I was in my second year at uni when I first joined it. Whereas now that's old technology, do you know? And these kids, sorry, I say kids. I call Matt Hudson-Smith a kid still. But like these athletes, this is part of what they do, and they understand it better than I do. I think it's just knowing how to switch off from it, how to go to a championships and turn your phone off. We've done it before where you have like a burner phone, so you literally have your contacts that you need to keep in contact with, and then you leave your other phone off. But now social media is a business as well, so it's understanding that athletes, if they want to make a living from the sport, they need to have a good social media presence, and they need to keep it updated constantly and keep working on it. And the best athletes have ways of dealing with that as well. So I think that pressure is difficult. I think from my point of view, I try to alleviate as much as possible, like saying like, okay, the goal setting is athlete led. It's not me, coach or UK sport led, which I think has helped. I think it means that they are invested in it for the right reasons, but also it takes a bit of like an external thing of like, it's just them and their team, and it's their group have decided this. So that's nice. And then, I think it's just make sure there's a big support network around them. There's a huge amount of support, either from UK Athletics or from England Athletics or the BOA, British Olympic Association. There's people around them there to make sure that they're well supported through these challenging times, and promoted when they need to be promoted. You know, like there's people on tap who are ready to support you and get your name out there as much as possible within these organisations. So, it's definitely difficult for you athletes now. I think it goes back to the same things of how we had a strategy about your warm up. It's like the best athletes who use social media are probably the Nielsen's. For me, Lavia and Nina Nielsen, they're excellent at it, but everything's structured. Everything's planned out in the sense of like, okay, this is a production. This is not just me flippantly putting a video up on Instagram. It's like, here's the videos, the stuff that happened. Here's the plan of action. This is the message we're trying to get across. It is organic. It's still like them and who they are, but it's like there's a reason behind it, and that makes sense. About Harry Aiken's Ariti, who's probably better known as a gladiator now, but like he was probably the first athlete to really take on board what social media was and what it offered. Like he was constantly getting scrutiny on social media. He was probably one of the most bullied athletes I'd ever seen on social media, but he used it as this is the way of promoting myself. So you have to go with the rough and smooth. And at the end of the day, like from his point of view, he's now become a minor TV celebrity. So it's worked, and he earns a good living doing it. So it's just understanding the value of it and what it's there for. I think that's the key thing. I wasn't very good at it. I wouldn't say I was that bothered about it either. But I suppose for athletes now, it's massively important to their careers.
Yeah, I didn't really think about that when I was thinking about social media, and obviously just that people being able to criticize and have opinions and stuff is what I was thinking about. But that's a really good point. Is unfortunately a lot of athletes, they do have to have other revenues of income coming in, and they can get that through social media and their social media use. So them being able to engage with it to kind of benefit them, and like I say, having it so they're not don't feel the stress and pressure of the burden of having to engage in that, and like I say, having that structure around it can ease that, can't it? And just another thing you were talking about before that with the goal setting that you've touched on a few times is that being athlete led, being kind of the athlete comes up with it, that autonomy that the athlete has over their goals is really important, whether you're in athletics or hockey or netball, whatever sport you're in. It's that kind of, if you come up with the goal, then naturally you're going to be more invested and more committed to it. And I suppose if coaches are listening as well, it's probably teaching them stuff they already know or not teaching them anything new. But if we can get the athlete involved in that process as much as possible, then it's obviously ever more powerful, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I think I found it, I work at Loughborough College, and last year was the first time we had goals set for the academies, so what they needed to achieve. And I felt the pressure was huge, like to go out and deliver. Whereas I think, so from my own experience, I knew that if it was my goal, I want to grow the academy and do it in certain ways, that was fine. But when someone else is saying we need to hit these points at championships, I was like, oh, that's tough. It's a different feeling, and especially when you're not in complete control of those environments. You don't know who, like as an athlete, you could come up against a super talent. You might find a new Usain Bolt in your age group, and you're like, well, what do? You just go out and try to achieve the goals that you've set and the processes that you've worked on. You just follow them to the best of your ability. So there's I think there's definitely like the goal setting is massively important. And I think what I said earlier about make sure they're challenging goals. It goes back to the point, smart is something that's used and gets athletes that don't always like using them, but having something that's kind of within your reach, actually does it push you enough? You need to really go to the next level.
Yeah, perfect. All right, just to wrap it up, mate. So the kind of, at the end of each podcast, I just want a bit of a takeaway for athletes to walk away from thinking, this is something I could try. This is a good message to take away. So what takeaway or activity would you recommend for any athlete listening to this to improve their mental skills or their sports psychology and their sport? What would it be around the goal setting, or what else could you think of that's helped you or you've seen other people kind of embed really well?
I think accepting that things aren't always going to go well, and how do you bounce back from that? So I think Dave Collins talks about trauma. As an athlete, you face those kind of things. Well, the session might not go well, but how do you come back from that? How do you get back ready and refocus? And I think that goes back to, okay, you've had a bad time, have some goals and keep them very clear and honest to yourself. You don't have to tell everybody, but sometimes for me, writing those down was important. That's why training diary becomes important. It's not always about what sessions you've done. It's like, okay, how did it go and how do I get better from that? So that's probably me. Like, how do you bounce back from something and have a process in place that works for you as an individual?
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, good message to end on. I guess with that, it's just how we structure those, isn't it? So, or those reflections when we're thinking about what's gone well and an actual instance, and then it's maybe say what's not gone so well, what's gone badly, but just reframing that into, okay, what do I need to do differently? What do I need to do better? What do I need to do to improve? It's just quite an easy way to reframe it that, again, puts the power with the athlete rather than kind of the situation they're in, I suppose.
Definitely. Excellent.
Perfect, Martyn. Thanks so much for kind of being the first guest on the Elite Sport Mentality podcast, and I really appreciate your time today.
Tom, cheers for letting me ramble.
No, it's been brilliant, mate. Thanks so much.
Thank you.